there was an event held in May time, and it was really about opening all the kind of cultural kind of resources about the festivals in Edinburgh. And one of the things I've been talking about doing for years is trying to do a map of all the festival venues using OpenStreetMap, and rather than just having your Google Maps style pins, to have something better. So I was like, it was a good opportunity for me to basically lock myself away and have food and coffee and try and do a map. So this is kind of what I did. So the disclaimer is it's put together very quickly. I'm no means an expert, but I kind of roughly know how the bits work. So there we go. So a bit about Edinburgh. There's 12 festivals, there's 300 fringe venues, and there's over 2,000 shows. I think there's something like 2,500 shows. That's what they were quoting this year. So there's an awful lot of extra information that we need to add to the map in order to actually show all these venues. And that's kind of what my target was. I've kind of missed for this year, but I'm going to get this up and running. The next festival, I guess, is the kind of New Year time, so I'm going to see if I can get something working for New Year. And if not, it'll definitely be working by next summer. Quote me on that while we're buying the beers this time next year. Background, so you've got places like this, so most people here probably recognise Bristow Square as somewhere. I couldn't find one with lots of skateboarders on actually on Flickr when I was hunting for pictures, but that's Bristow Square. And then when the festival arrives, this happens, the big cow arrives, and it goes from being area equals foot to area equals big upside down cow dash bar dash theatre venue. So how do we handle that on OpenStreetMap was my question. So first of all, once we go through my slides, existing maps don't handle this well. So that's what Google Maps looks like if you look at the same area. And what's weird is this is all year round, but if you look at Google Maps, Pleasant Stone's on there. Up in this corner here, on the Cowgate, they show Underbelly and the Cowgate, but in completely the wrong place. They show Underbelly's there, it should be there. Yeah, there's lots of things like that which are wrong here. They're clearly not dealing with this kind of temporal 1-2 months of the year kind of data very well. So this is a website someone already had, which they called Edinburgh Festival Map.co.uk, which is unfortunate because that's quite a good domain name. But this is just pinpoints stuck on the map. And again, they're not actually that accurate. I think the guy just used postcodes when he set it up. So a lot of the things aren't quite in the right place. Like number 49, which is Bedlam, should be on the top corner. 14, Gilder Balloon Teviot shown being on top of McEwen Hall. Yeah, it's just wrong, and it's just annoying because of the way it's been done. So I was like, we must be able to do better than that. And it's not been updated since 2009. So actually OpenStreetMap's a good way of recording this information.
Do you know who did that?
No, I've no idea. I mean, we could look at the domain name and I'm sure we could trace it back, so I've no idea.
Because I just wondered if he would join in.
Well, I think he was kind of doing it as a bit of a CEO type, and just as a way of getting links rather than because he was actually believed it was a useful thing for anybody. That was the kind of impression I got looking at it. He had kind of lots of links. So I think if we followed the links, you'd find out who it was. And he's got adverts on it and stuff. So I don't think he's done it for the love of maps or knowing where things are in the festival. Because if he had, the quality, there's lots of obvious things that are obviously in the wrong place, but clearly that's not a problem if you're doing it for the wrong reasons. So this is kind of the rough process I went through. I defined the tagging, and I just kind of had a bit of a thought about it, and it's definitely something that's open for debate. I created a mapping features page. I'm not going to switch to it now. For Edinburgh festivals, and I defined a set of tags, but it's basically Edinburgh Festival. I'm not sure if this is the best way of doing it, but I did Edinburgh Fringe equals, and I did the venue name, Edinburgh Fringe name, Edinburgh Fringe number. I did Edinburgh International Festival name and number, because some venues can be both Fringe and International Festival. So like the Queen's Hall is often used for Fringe shows and for International Festival shows. So is there a way of, it's quite a basic tagging, so if people are interested in it, it'd be great if you could have a look at the mapping features page and make any suggestions, or if you can come up with a better tagging scheme. Then I'm not totally convinced that what I've got is the best one, but it was what seemed sensible at the time. I was talking yesterday in detail about this. I've followed the instructions that Richard Waite had put on his website about how to build your own server, and that kind of goes from the process of what software you need. The main software stack is to get Postgres and the Postgres GIS extensions installed, and to get Mapnik up and running. And then there's another software called OSM to Hostages, which basically takes your OSM shapefile and puts it in. I got my data from, we've talked already about the GeoFabric. Extracts, that's the one. The GeoFabric extract, so I just got Scotland, we talked about that, it's about 30 megs download, but about 700 megs when you extract it. And you never actually even need to extract it. The OSM2 Hostages just takes the BZ file and does everything from that. I then had a bit of a play with styling it, so this is the point where I'm kind of in the process, some things still aren't quite right. So I'm styling, and I've got deployment, I've got OpenLayers up and running and have it working, so I can show you. I just don't have all the venues in yet. Or if some other people have added the venues, I've not done an update yet, so that kind of still needs a bit of work. And actually then the next step is just to set it up, so either running off the diff files or regularly just downloading the extracts and updating the tiles. I had a play with doing it more OpenStreetMap style, where you don't you kind of render the tiles on request and then cache them, but that's a lot more work to set up. And I calculated to do the whole of Edinburgh to Zoom 18 is about 2 gigs of files, which is quite acceptable to store on a web server. Obviously, if you wanted to do the whole world at Zoom 18 pre-rendered, A, the rendering time is going to be a very long time, and B, I don't know, that's a lot of disk space. So for this purpose, actually the simple one, which is just have the tiles pre-rendered, works great, and you need a lot less computing power to do that as well. So because you just generate the tiles at 3 o'clock in the morning when your server's quiet. So that was the process of building the map. When I was talking this through with people, one of the things that everybody said would be really good if we could kind of understand that geometry in Edinburgh, where you've got South Bridge and George IV Bridge and then the Cowgate going underneath, and how to navigate between them and how to make sure they're shown as something different. I think that's something I'm definitely going to look at in the future. I don't know if you're adding, I don't know if SRTM kind of level of data in terms of putting in heights is going to be anything close to accurate enough. It's probably not.
I don't think so, no.
So I don't know if there's a way of showing that this street is a different level to that street, maybe 3D buildings or something like that. But that's something kind of for the future.
Just emphasise the bridges.
Or just emphasise the bridges, just make them really kind of
black lines down the
black lines down the side, and make sure it's really obvious that they don't connect. Yeah, I mean that might be enough. But that's something I want to have a look at with this, is just trying to make that thing easier for people. Another one of the things was, this is actually normally a lane, but then it becomes a venue. So, and the whole of that venue is kind of within existing buildings. So actually, where do I put the underbelly? It kind of has an entrance on Victoria Street, and then an entrance somewhere different down here, and then the venues are kind of under the bridge and inside the library. So actually representing some venues like that, the caves is another one that's probably quite hard to obviously represent as either a node, I guess you can, or a point, because that's got entries at different levels and 2 different places, and how do you connect them together? So that's just an issue and something to think about. The accessibility for that one is very simple, which is wheelchair equals no. Wheelchair equals you'll be carried up the stairs, but yeah. You do get a free helper ticket. So there we go. I'm trying to see if I actually put any screenshots in. Yeah, so these are the things I want to do with it again afterwards, is publicise it. So this is me telling you all about it. We did talk about trying to do like a day in June to actually get all the venues added in, but I've been too busy. Routing and search would also be really good. State of the map, there's someone talking about the new version of Mapnik has a JSON layer. So everything that's rendered on the layer on the map can also be represented by a JSON layer, and that makes doing things like click sensitive maps much easier, because at the same time you're loading your map tiles, you load the JSON in, and you can then know which areas to be hotspots, and you can then start popping up things when people click on them. So that'll be a really nice feature to add in the future, so you can make all the venues clickable. Right.
Where did you actually host your site?
So I've got a how do I get out the presentation? There we go. I have a Bytemark virtual server, so it costs, which I do my main website and things on as well. So it's not very powerful, but it has the tiles and it renders them, it serves them quite quickly. So that's all I've done. But again, because I'm just doing a pure tile thing, if you were to, this would actually be hosted quite nicely on like the Amazon S3 type system, and just pay for your bandwidth. Would probably be, if you're expecting higher volumes for something like this, that would be a good way of hosting them.
So you don't do it in the house then?
I don't do it in the house, no. The 1 meg uplink is just a bit too limiting for something like this, I think. and that's on Virgin, so that's quite a good connection. But I think it would kind of really if you get 2 or 3 people, it probably would manage it. But yeah, it's not ideal. So you can see what I've done here. So there's the underbelly pasture that I was talking about. It goes from being the pedestrian area to being a blue area. What I've had to do is layer things up. So the layering doesn't quite work. And the one that doesn't work is the Pleasance Courtyard, where what I've done is I've just rendered all my festival venues at quite a high level, and because that's an area equals, I need to do that at the same area as the areas equal. So that's a question of, in terms of the rendering, because it builds the layers on top of each other, I've got to get the ordering right to make sure that doesn't happen. This was me just playing with it first time, so this is kind of my first pass. So I now know what the issues are, but I need to spend a bit of time working on Festival Theatre as a different colour. And there we go, that's it really. But it's something that I'd kind of just say it is surprisingly easy to do. So if you do have you were talking about using, there's lots of different ways of doing it, so well worth playing with, and you get, I think without spending too much time, and I need to work on the colours, I'm quite pleased with that result. So there we are. Cheers.
I was asking this, to other people, because a lot of what I keep hearing with different projects is the difficulty of being able to represent your particular set of data on the top of OpenStreetMap. And I know that there's a WebGL map of OpenStreetMap. I can't remember what it's called at the moment. But would there be, do you think would be any advantage of trying to use that particular technology rather than the layers that we use in the layers of tiles that we've got?
The WebGL stuff, I'm not that blown away by it. So you kind of, the WebGL is kind of doing a 3GE type representation, and it looks very fancy, and it's maybe good for things that have mountains and more scenic things. I don't know how great that is for tiles. One thing that looks really promising, I don't know if you were around when we were talking about it, is a Gothic, which is a JavaScript in browser rendering. Let's see if we can find it. No. Gothic JS.
There's Gothic real-time map. Oh, there is.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if that's the one. That's the actual map. This is all done as in-browser JavaScript, and it actually looks really good. So I think that's probably this is a really promising technology for being able to decide what you want to display much more on the fly than having, because obviously with the pre-rendered tiles you've got to pre-render them, and therefore if you want to turn something on and off, whereas because this is doing the rendering in your browser and it's making those decisions at the time, I think being able to do things like highlight things, so it's kind of got
open source.
This is open source, yeah.
I'm just wondering if, because you've got a separate date, because the Fringe and the Festival, it's there and then it's not.
Yeah. Yes, it's temporal. So that's a tagging problem, isn't it? Whether or not it's even appropriate to tag something that's there for 1 month of the year. So that's maybe 10% of the year it's there, and 90% of the year it's not. Yeah. So
I think it'd be very useful. But also I think the problem I'm hearing with lots of different data sets is the constant updating of the data.
Yeah.
But I know that with the Fringe and the Festival, the names of the venues, the numbers of the venues are
that's fixed.
pretty constant. It is. There will always be the updating of the data.
Yeah.
That's why the first guy's 2009. It was wrong now.
Yeah.
But I think that. So you don't necessarily think there'd be an advantage, maybe doing it this way rather than.
Well, I think the big advantage of doing it with an OpenStreetMap is when you've got a building, you can do it as a building. Hopefully, for something like Underbelly Cowgate, you can actually try and represent the 2 entrances, even if it's 2 nodes and a line between them to say, or a set of stairs between them that only appears as, and festival venue, and at least there's 2 different entrances. So that's, I think, the big advantage to doing an OpenStreetMap and actually having it in there, and it fits nicely on top of pretty much everything. Yeah, most of those structures and buildings are already there, so you're just representing a different use for them rather than anything else. And in my case, I think I would probably be fairly keen to keep it up to date as long as I was doing it. So I certainly know I would keep it up to date, And again, I think hopefully the model would kick in where again, if people are actually looking at the map and using the map, then I think if something wasn't updated from one year to the next, then I think people would hopefully, again, it's that you've kind of got to put it in front of people and hope that the community of people that are using it will then update it. Yeah, it certainly seems to work well for some things. Hopefully it'll work for other things like a more niche map, like a festival map.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you did, if there was a good job, I mean, you could easily just kind of sell the whole bundle to the Fringe and Festival.
Yeah,
and then
and the guys that did the Edinburgh Fringe map were really quite interesting. I mean, one of the big problems in Edinburgh is suddenly you've got this huge influx of people, and if you're trying to use data on your phone, it just doesn't work. So they try and have everything cached locally on the phone, so they keep all the program information on the phone. And obviously that doesn't work using the built-in phone map API. But they were then, I think there is serious consideration that they could potentially I could generate them a set of tiles. There's like I think it's an SQLite type format that people tend to use. Put them all into an SQLite database that they could then put onto people's phones, and then you would have a map of the festival venues, showing the festival venues, the footpaths, the cycle routes. That's much better than the built-in maps on your phone. So I think there's definitely use cases like that would use that. So, and that's the Kothig stuff. The fact that it just does that's doing it in the browser. And
so where is that getting the vector data from to render that? Like, is the vector data pre-sliced into tiles, or?
Yes, I think they pre-slice the vector
Right.
data into tiles, so it loads the data for each tile. So
Right.
it does have some server side. It's not doing an API query directly.
Right.
I don't know the exact implementation, but just yet another technology to figure out whether or not it's any use to you or not. And the other one, and how to use the other one that looks really promising for doing tiles and rendering is TileMill, which again is open source. And the screenshots of it look nice. I've not tried to run it, but it has it uses Map CSS, which is the same Kothig uses Map CSS as does Potlatch. So they're all using the same kind of mapping description language, and they do and these guys will do your server, but the actual software is open source. So I probably don't want need the open source version rather than the paid for version. So yeah, that's just another option really. But they've got this nice editor, which isn't loading up. Where you can pick the colours and what objects you have different colours and edit your map CSS. So they've got a much more interactive editor, which solves the problem I had with that, which is I now need to change this thing. I now need to generate a map, see what it looks like. Oh, that didn't quite work right. Flying through, I think there's 8,000 lines of XML doing the OpenStreetMap style, which is what I started with. So it's quite a steep learning curve. That was, I think, things like this make life much easier. Cheers.
Thanks.